You can refuse to answer police questions because it's your constitutional right. Ever wonder why lawyers always tell you to stay silent, even when you're innocent? Today, I'll explain refusing police questions like you're 5. By the end, you'll know exactly when to stay silent. You'll learn why talking ruins cases for innocent people. And you'll learn the one sentence that shuts down questioning legally. Make sure you're subscribed. This could save you thousands in legal fees. Here's the thing about police questions and your brain. When a cop asks you a question, your brain does something automatic. You answer, because someone asks your name and you say it. Someone asks where you're going and you tell them. We're trained from kindergarten that ignoring questions is rude. We believe that not cooperating makes you look guilty. But here's what nobody tells you about police lying. Police are legally allowed to lie to you during questioning. They can say your friend confessed when they didn't. They can claim they have evidence they don't actually have. They can promise talking will help when it won't help at all. That's not illegal during investigations. Courts have said over and over, cops can lie during investigations. But if you lie to them, that becomes a crime. You can get charged with lying just for that. So they can lie to you, but you can't lie back. Which sounds fair, right? So, what actually happens when you refuse to answer? Most people think staying silent makes you look guilty, like the cop will just assume you did it and arrest you right there. Here's the reality of how arrests work. If they have enough evidence to arrest you, they're arresting you anyway. Talking doesn't change that. But if they don't have enough evidence to arrest you, your words might give it to them. You're not talking your way out of an arrest. You're only talking your way into one. Let me show you how this plays out. Officer pulls you over. Asks if you know why. You say, "Was I speeding?" Boom. You just admitted you might have been speeding. You gave them reasonable suspicion you weren't paying attention to your speed. They didn't even have to prove it yet. You did their job for them. But wait, doesn't the cop need a reason to stop you in the first place? Yes, and here's where it gets tricky. A cop can stop you if they have reasonable suspicion you committed a crime. That bar is low, really low. You match a vague description. You're in a high crime area. Your car looks similar to one they're looking for. That's enough. Once they stop you, they can ask questions. You still don't have to answer. But most people don't know that, so they talk. And talking gives the cop more information than they had when they stopped you. Now here's the part that surprises everyone. Even if you start answering questions, you can stop anytime. You're not locked in. You can be in the middle of a sentence and say, "I'm not answering any more questions without a lawyer." That's it. Legally, the cop has to stop asking. They're not supposed to keep pushing. Now, some will anyway. They'll say things like, "Why do you need a lawyer if you didn't do anything?" Or, "Innocent people don't ask for lawyers." That's manipulation. They're trying to make you feel guilty for using your rights. Don't fall for it. Wanting a lawyer doesn't make you look guilty. It makes you look smart. So, what do you actually say? Here's the magic sentence. I'm invoking my right to remain silent, and I want a lawyer. Say it clearly. Say it out loud. Don't mumble. Don't say, "I think I should talk to a lawyer," or "maybe I shouldn't answer that." Those wishy-washy versions don't count. Courts have ruled that you have to clearly invoke your rights. You have to actually hit pause. Thinking about hitting pause doesn't stop the game. Before I show you what cops do to get around this, you need to understand why this right exists. The Fifth Amendment says you can't be forced to incriminate yourself. That protection exists because the founders knew how interrogations worked in England. Cops would torture people until they confessed. Didn't matter if they were innocent. Everyone breaks eventually. So the founders built in a shield. You don't have to help the government prove you're guilty. That's their job, not yours. The system is designed so you can sit there and say nothing, and the state has to prove their case anyway. That's not you being difficult. That's the system working exactly how it's supposed to. But here's what police do to get around it. They start conversations that don't feel like interrogations. "Nice day, huh? Where you headed? What do you do for work?" Seems harmless. You're just chatting. But they're building rapport, getting you comfortable. And once you're talking, they shift the questions. "So you're coming from work. What time did you leave?" Now they're gathering timeline information. You didn't even realize the interrogation started. Here's another tactic. They separate people. You and your friend get pulled over. They ask you questions in the front seat, and they ask your friend questions in the back. Then they compare answers. If your stories don't match perfectly, they act like someone's lying. Maybe you said you left at 8. Your friend said 8:15. Now you're both suspects because you didn't tell identical stories. That's not evidence of a crime. That's just two people remembering things slightly differently. But cops treat it like you're hiding something. They can even say something is off the record. But legally, there's no such thing with police. So let's talk about what actually happens when you stay silent. You say the magic sentence, "I'm invoking my right to remain silent, and I want a lawyer." The cop might get annoyed. They might act frustrated. They might say you're making things harder. Ignore all of that. What they can't do legally is keep questioning you. Some will try anyway. They'll ask, "Are you sure?" Or, "Don't you want to tell your side?" Those are still questions. Don't answer. Just repeat, "I'm not answering questions without a lawyer." You're not being rude. You're using the rights the Constitution gave you. Now, staying silent doesn't mean you can ignore lawful orders. If a cop tells you to step out of the car, you have to do it. If they ask for your license and registration, you have to provide it in most states. Those aren't questions about a crime. Those are lawful commands during a stop. You can comply with commands and still refuse to answer questions. They're two different things. Think of it like a teacher telling you to sit down versus a teacher asking why you were late. You have to sit. You don't have to explain. Here's the reality nobody talks about. Refusing to answer questions might mean you get arrested when talking could have avoided it. That's possible. But here's the math defense lawyers do. If talking gets you out of an arrest 10% of the time, but talking gets you convicted 50% of the time, staying silent is the smarter bet. You're playing the long game. An arrest is temporary, and maybe nothing comes of it. A conviction follows you forever. You don't gamble your future trying to avoid an uncomfortable hour. And here's something most people never think about. Cops aren't investigators when they're asking you questions. They're evidence collectors. They're not trying to figure out what happened. They're trying to build a case. Your truth might not fit their case, so they'll ignore the parts that help you and highlight the parts that don't. Memory isn't perfect either. You get one detail wrong. The time you left, the street you were on. Now the cop thinks you're lying. That little mistake makes you look guilty, even though you told the truth about everything else. If this just changed how you think about your rights, send this to someone who drives, who goes out at night, who exists in public. Everyone needs to know this before they're standing on the side of the road panicking. So here's the takeaway. You have the right to remain silent, because the system knows police have more power than you. That right is the equalizer. It's not suspicious to use it. It's not guilty to use it. It's just smart. The cop might make you feel bad. They're trained to. But feeling uncomfortable for an hour is better than sitting in a courtroom wishing you'd kept your mouth shut. That instinct to explain yourself, to prove you didn't do anything wrong, to cooperate so they'll leave you alone. That's the instinct that ruins cases. You don't owe police an explanation or your story. Just license and registration when required. Everything else is optional. And once you see it that way, the whole interaction changes. You're not being interrogated. You're just someone who knows their rights. Hit subscribe and drop a comment. If a cop pulled you over tonight and started asking questions, would you actually stay silent, or would the pressure to explain yourself win? Be honest. Knowing your rights and using them under pressure are two completely different things. I read every comment, and your answer might help someone else thinking through this right now.